Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations.
social selling maybe.
Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Laura. Great to be here. I'm excited about
Absolutely.
what's to come.
For me, you are a person I'm really much looking up to when we're talking sales leadership, sales knowledge. I found you on LinkedIn, and when I started to follow, I was like, okay, so this guy is actually in the shoes of a sales leader at a startup, and he knows a shitload loads of things how people are buying nowadays, especially when buying from a startup. It's like, all right, so Patrick Truempi, Chief Sales Officer at Unique. Welcome. Could you give a quick intro to yourself to the listeners?
For sure. Thank you, Laura, for the intro. So yeah, I've been in sales for 10 years now, software sales. Started right off university, and guess what? As a Swiss person, I never wanted to do sales in my life before. I think almost no European thinks about that career as a perspective. Yeah, I got in while I was studying, actually. I sold insurances and financial products to private clients. That's how I kind of went into sales without knowing that it actually happened. Yeah, because it was quite a strange company. You know, it's we arrived first time. I got hired way too quickly. I was like, huh? No CV and nothing. So just thought, okay, that's a bit weird. Then I went there. We had 2 hours of lessons about financial products, and then we had this list, and they said, okay, write down all the people you know with the phone number. And I was like, whoa, what? Why? So we did that, and after that, they said, okay, now call them, book meetings. So we had to call them and book meetings. That's how that was luckily not cold calling. Huh? We had a little bit of training, but because it was people I knew, I trained basically on the job with people I knew. That's how I got into sales, and never quit. It was a fun ride since then. Worked in a few Swiss tech scale-ups in Germany, UK, US, usually from below 1 million to around 10, a bit above 10 million ARR. And that has been my sweet spot so far. It's a lot of fun, but also very tough at times, as you probably know as well.
Yeah, I do. And especially that part, the tough part we're going to talk about, like, how do you set up the processes? How do you start selling in the smaller team? Because nothing is set. It's like my story is a little bit different because I was working at larger enterprises where they say, oh, so this is the playbook. So these are the companies you're working with. And here's the list. And if you find some extra ones, oh, that's nice. This is upsell. But the rest is renewals. Okay. So it's a total different story where you are. Because, well, you have to define, like, more or less pave the road of your writing, and the company is relying on you to do that. So that's not easy.
That's true.
All right. So now you are at Unique. And when did you join the company, and at what stage, and what were the processes that you were walking through within sales?
I joined exactly 2 years ago. Company was 2 months old, was founded June 2021. We were, I don't know, 10 people, maybe a bit less. All engineers, one salesperson back then. I had 0 clients. Product was not released yet. Now you're thinking, wow, and it's true. Joining as a sales leader without a released product is it's quite same as founding, right? It's a bit similar. But the guys started already quite before, and I didn't bother much about that. It does help that you know how a enterprise sales process or buying process looks like. Not just enterprise, also mid-market or SME, how it looks like. Because the first time when I joined 10 years ago, there was StarMind. I joined as a sales rep, and nobody told me, Patrick, first meeting, is a discovery call. So you can, you ask these questions and then you try to book a next meeting and then do a demo or whatever. I had no idea. I went into the meetings. Usually it was physical meetings. We had a PowerPoint printed out, put it on the table, and then showed stuff like this. Yeah, no computer. We had a PowerPoint printed out. That's how I did sales the first 1.5 years, even though we sold the software, and I had no clue. I did that for 1.5 or 2 years, and I think we lost so much. I mean, I don't want to know how many potential clients I lost in that time, because the way I did it was just not effective.
Yeah.
So it didn't help, right? We didn't have, but back then there was just no one in Switzerland really who could tell you how, and because there weren't many software companies out of that country.
Yeah.
And it was a new emerging market and so on. So it definitely helps if you can come and join the company and say, okay, I have a vague idea how the process should look like, more or less. But then it helps even more if you put yourself through the process. That's why I'm still doing everything as well. I don't have much time for cold calling, that's right, but I do it, let's say, 2 hours a week, just to know which pain points are still resonating a lot.
Right.
So go through the process yourself, and then you have to adjust certain things. You have to see what are patterns in the process that you can potentially build into the sales process, not making it too rigid, but also having a guideline for salespeople. Because usually it was like that. I had a discovery call, then a demo, and most salespeople after the demo, they don't know what to do. They're like, client, now they showed everything, right? They probably showed everything. That's most of the time the case. And then they're like, okay, what do I suggest now? What's the next meeting going to be? Is it another discovery? Is it a demo? Do I have to invite more people? That's usually a situation I had very often. So I knew I need to have a guideline after that as well for my team, that they know, okay, I suggest a workshop or I suggest an ROI meeting or something like this. So it helps the people to know, to prepare well for the calls and then suggest it in the demo before, even at the beginning. No, abstract, hey, today is about, we discussed about some pain points of yours. Today we'll look at the solution. And if you think the solution is viable for the pain, then let's think about organizing a workshop to dive deeper. Is that okay with you? And if they give you a yes, then, people need to know that.
Yeah, and workshop thing was also one of the things where I reached out to you several months ago, where we discussed like this is the next step that a lot of companies definitely say yes to, because if they're going to invest a lot of money into something, well, it better works, and a lot of people have to be involved in like adapting it, using it, and so on. So we are going to unpack that 100%. But before we do that, there were some people saying hi to us that are listening to us live right now. So if you have any questions to Patrick or just want to say how cool he is, you can do that. But most of them, we would love to have questions so we could follow your interest as well about B2B sales. All righty, good.
Welcome, everybody. Nice that you're here.
Yeah. Okay. So now you mentioned a little bit how you started at Unique and how you were selling with the PowerPoints. And then walk me through, how did you figure out the changes themselves that you came to where you are right now? Because, well, it's all changing and it will be better next month again. But when did you figure out that what are the right things to do for our buyers to followers and to finally to start buying the product that started to exist?
Yeah, a good question. I think there are several sources. There were several sources in my life for this. The best thing that happened in my career was, after 3 years selling at Starmind with printed PowerPoints, right? We had a two-man sales trainers, like two sales trainers, who implemented a whole process for us in that company that fit the buying and selling process for Starmind. That was the company I was before. That they had so much input, so many ideas, so many concepts. It helped me a lot to understand how that can look very, very different. So that's one of the sources I had. So external training. I mean, I read probably, don't know, 50 to 60% of sales books there are. So you get constant
Yeah.
input, you try out, and if it works, I implement
Yeah.
basically. So the workshop concept, I didn't use it at Larry, the company I was before, CSO, because our deal size, our average deal size was around 50K, 40 to 50K. Didn't need it for this, but when we moved at Unique from the SME process to the enterprise process, I implemented it again. And I only had it because we already used it at Starmine. I would not have had the idea myself. No way, and probably not. I'm not the most creative guy and coming up with ideas all the time. But yeah, a lot of input
Yeah.
from other people, mentors. I'm talking to a lot of friends who are in the same situation as I am in Switzerland. Lars Mangelsdorf, the CCO from Yokoi, who grew it from 0 to 300 people, is one guy. I mean, I learn a lot when I talk to these people. I think it's important to have these kind of mentors and people.
Throughout that process, which of the sales methodologies stuck with you that you think are worth adopting or at least looking into for B2B SaaS?
B2B SaaS, you mean general B2B SaaS or enterprise specific or
To start with, it's more general from your experience, what you tried out and what went, and then we're going to dig more deep into the SME versus enterprise differences.
Yeah. Okay. One thing that I find important, obviously discovery calls, right? But that's too broad. But what's important in discovery calls, what I often experience in the first 5 years is, you teach people to ask questions and yes, they're curious, but then they ask something like, okay, what's your challenge, or something like at the beginning of the meeting. That's a viable question, right? It's always the best question to ask. Why are you here? And then most of the people say just shopping, or hey, you sent me a cold email, hey, that's why I'm here, didn't think about it anything, and then directly jump potentially into the product, or they have a way too open discussion. So when I ask what are your challenges, the person, I sell sales tech, and the person tells me, okay, I'm hiring the next best salesperson is my biggest challenge, and I'm selling a sales tech that has nothing to do with hiring. So they talked 5 minutes about something that is really not anything that I would want to talk about. So what I suggest is at the beginning, yes, discovery call, but come up with 3 of the biggest challenges in that industry. So when I'm talking to a bank, I have like the 3 biggest challenges that we have with other banks and we solve with other banks. I show these, and then I ask which one is the most important one for you at the moment. And then I dive into that. So don't have a too open conversation. Too open is time waste for everybody. You can still ask at some point, or you have to ask, is this strategically important? But most of the time, strategic stuff you can look up on the website. It's right there, and you can kind of connect it to something that is strategically important. So I think that's and you need it in cold calls as well.
Yeah.
So in cold calls, it's exactly the same, right? I call them and I say, look, I'm talking to a lot of sales leaders who tell me they have exactly these 2 challenges. First one, the reps, after every single interaction with their customers, they have to take a note in the CRM, what they talked about, what they recommended. And that's with most of the banks, regulatory requirement as well. So it takes them 20 minutes to do. And yeah, is that something you're familiar with? And bam, you're into a discussion. So I only said one now, obviously I can say a second one. And with the cold call, it's the same, right? You try to bring them on the topic that you're good at.
Yeah.
Don't be too open. Do discovery, don't be too open. Narrow it down and show your understanding of the challenges that you can solve. That's a big one, I think I realized.
It's absolutely massive, and it comes with experience as well. So the more you dig into those calls and figure out, okay, this was an awkward conversation because we spoke so broad stuff that I cannot use for anything to move this further.
Yeah.
So now look at the product. It's like,
I did thousands of times myself, honestly.
Exactly. That happens for a lot of people, for whoever the best of us.
Now look at the product.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely.
Yes.
So what do you think the next step should be then? Now you saw it. It's beautiful. It's like, yes, I love this. It's like, okay, we'll get back to you. Very cool.
Yes.
Okay, so there's one question that I will pop up right now before we dig into a little bit of a differences between SMEs and enterprises as well. So it's still back to the methodologies, and you do speak about MEDIC and MEDPIC. So, hey, Patrick, how efficient, in your opinion, is the MEDIC qualification of opportunities and discoveries?
Yeah, so not sure what's meant by efficient, but I do think, I mean, I'm a strong believer in it's good to have some kind of methodology in your head that you constantly think about when before talking to a client, when like you look at the opportunity and you're like, what else can I do with this opportunity? So in the back of your mind, you need a concept that helps you to direct your thoughts. Okay, metric. Do I have a business case with that client? I mean, identify pain and metric is the same. I it doesn't have to be medic. Obviously, you have to adjust or you can adjust it to your buying process. I did write a quite an article about medic and
Yeah.
spin and bond and so on. And my learning was out of learning and reading everything about these methodologies is there's a lot of that there are some common topics in these. And when you look at the four most important ones, I mean, the first one is obvious, right? The pain, challenge, metric, business case, something, there needs to be something that is worth talking about for the client. That builds the urgency, compelling event, you can use biased methodology, problem, impact, and compelling event. That together is, for me, that can be one thing, but you have to understand the problem and the impact of the problem. And you have to, in the enterprise, and that's the difference in enterprise and SME. In enterprise, you have to quantify it. If you sell 20K deals, you don't have to have a quantifiable business case. The lower the deals go, the more emotions decide. The higher the deals go, the more numbers decide.
Yeah.
Because the more people are involved, the less you can sell on emotions. Yes, there's always, people always decide emotionally, that's for sure. But if you see a big number that makes you feel about it, right? If you see like, oh, we lose 10 millions a year, oh, obviously it's an emotion afterwards. But so you need numbers in the enterprise game. In the SME game, you don't necessarily need big business cases. I mean, I didn't buy Salesforce or all these tools because we had a business case. So that's one thing. There's always some kind of pain. Then you know, okay, people is important. Who is involved? Like economic buyer, champion, these kind of personas that are in there. So you need to understand something about this. So you have in the back of your mind, you can always think, okay, do I know the economic buyer? Do I know the champion? Do I have a champion? What does make a good champion? Selfish interest, access to economic buyer. Do they help me really, and do they only push myself? That's something you should figure out with a champion, for instance. So you need to kind of understand what the people and their roles are in the deal. So problem like the pain, impact, and the people process. Also, you always need to kind of understand the process. Ideally, like what are the steps to be taken until the decision is made? Do we have to go to the executive board? Do we have to do that blah blah blah? So I think these three are probably the most important ones.
Yeah.
If you have these three in the back of your head and keep working on them, you're on track. And then you have like, competition, for instance, is always a good example. Do you have to think of competition? Yes, you have, but for some it's quite important. For others, it's like we don't really have that much of competition now anymore in the Swiss market in banks, but we do have competition in the UK,
Yeah.
for instance, because the markets differ. So in Switzerland, competition is not that important. In the UK, competition is important, and to know early whether they talk to competition.
Yeah.
With inbound, competition is way more important because inbound people, most of the time, they figured out the problem already. They're probably looking around. They're further in the sales process, in the buying process. Outbound with a new topic, I mean, nobody thought about having a solution like ours in the banking industry so far. So we are always the first. That's not that important. So that's what you have to figure out for yourself. We actually, one last point to that, we work internally, we do 5P reviews with the whole team. So the whole team comes together. It's actually right after this meeting, and today I'm presenting a case. So I'm presenting a case that with an opportunity that is quite far ahead, and I present the pain, I present the people that are involved, I present power. Where is the power? I present the process, the internal one, and the process, the external one. That's the 5P framework. I had no idea where I learned it from. And it's quite cool. As a team, I suggest that you do these reviews like this. So people present something and everybody's in there and everybody says, hey, have you thought of that, Patrick? Have you asked this question? Have you done this? And usually you're like, oh no, I haven't. And then you get out with quite some tasks that you need to do. And that's quite helpful as a team.
Absolutely love that. To unpack this one, we sat down the other day with our CEO as well to things like, oh, we need to refine our playbook. How do we need to do things and so on. And what we like came up with an message for everybody. It doesn't really matter which framework you're using as long as you're using one. So is it MEDPIC? Is it spin? It's more or less potato. It goes around the same thing, but as long as you figure out those 5Ps that you're talking about, it's still the same. It's just like you would have to know which questions to ask at each and to uncover each and every P in the process as well. And I love
That's right.
the idea of peer meetings together because, well, you're a sales leader and you're still working on deals, but you're more or less a lonely mind who brings in other people into meetings, but you're the only one strategizing around the deal while you're alone. But if you bring it to a meeting with other people, no matter the seniority of the salespeople, they have different ideas, or either they can learn from the process that you're doing, or they can come up with different ideas that you haven't thought of or something to uncover. I love that. We do that a lot at Dream Data as well.
Yes, yeah. No, that's I agree. So the framework, you do have to understand where it's coming from, that's for sure, so that you can adopt it. I mean, using Medic for an SME motion, no, I don't think that's useful. Spin more so, because Spin is quite focused on one meeting, where in one meeting, you try to go through the whole Spin methodology, so it doesn't really help you qualify throughout the process. It's one meeting usually. The way I learned it, Band is a famous one coming up all the time, right?
I love that one.
Has been invented by IBM in the 50s or 60s, or no idea when exactly, and it was to filter out bad inbound leads. And you can't use Bond very well if you outbound and then go into first meeting and you're like, okay, do you have budget? You reached
have
out to me,
authority.
cold. How? For what?
Exactly. No, Tom Boston is
That's
really
the way.
good at those jokes on LinkedIn. I
Yeah,
love that a lot.
true. Yes, true.
Let's uncover the SME and enterprise world. So now you're mentioning that there are some methodologies that definitely don't work for enterprises. So since you moved away from selling to SMEs now to enterprises, what did you choose to remove out of your processes, what you were used to use, and what did you add in?
I mean, mostly we were adding stuff because it's getting longer and more tedious. As I said, the business case, definitely. Like before we had usually an ROI or a meeting where we deep dived into the use cases a bit more. There was one meeting, 1 hour with the champion and ideally the economic buyer. Moved that out and we moved in the workshop, which usually takes like 3 hours. And we have, I mean, 2 days ago, we had one with one of the biggest Swiss banks. There were like 13 people in the meeting, 3 hours. We figured out together what are the two most important use cases for that company right now, for all these people who were there. We prioritized this. So, I mean, there were maybe 50 use cases on the wall. We prioritized it to 2. Then we figured out what is the impact if we solve them. So we walked with a business case, and we knew exactly what people for these two use cases are the people for us to continue the discussion and then finally get budget, because the business case is quite strong, and that's what we added. So we added that step, which usually is the third step in the process, but obviously enterprise says it doesn't always happen, right? You have a discovery, a demo, and then that person maybe is not strong enough in the organization to organize a workshop with 10 people. Maybe you need to win a few more before. That's all right. And you do more demo discovery, like a 1 hour meeting where you do disco and demo together in one meeting. And to win and until you have a workshop. Some companies, sometimes it happens, they say, look, data protection wise, that's too critical. I need to ask somebody from data protection first before we can even move on. So you have this, then you have the workshop. And then we have a decision, not it's a decision meeting or a proposal meeting where we invite the economic buyer with the results of the workshop, the business case, and the concrete pricing for the two use cases. So they know exactly, okay, now I have to pay this, I get this in the first year, this is the timeline. And that you get quite quickly to a decision like this. Obviously afterwards, okay, the executive board member likely needs to also present it into the executive board, because you prepared everything, because you have the business case, you have exactly what you want to do, you showed this how the solution looks like exactly for their case. It's quite simple. They just take your slide deck and sell it in the executive board, because that you won't manage to get in there, right? I tried thousands of times, didn't work. I asked thousands of times, hey, can I come as well? Most of the time, no way. Sometimes you get a 10-minute. I did get a 10-minute slot sometimes, but very, very rare. So, and then, in our case, what then starts is the data protection security, because we are recording real client conversations from Swiss banks. I mean, Swiss banks are the bank secrecy law and so on. So there's really, I mean, because of the history of Switzerland, it's the most critical data, I guess, even not in the world. I mean, the CIA probably has more critical data, or the police, or I don't know, but it's quite tedious to get through the paper and data protection security. So that's added as well afterwards. Business case, and this most important aspect is business case. In this one, I already said SME, it was not a critical point, but now no business case, no deal.
Yeah, very interesting. And how long is the customer journey for your enterprise clients right now?
We have, so actually to get to a verbal decision, like to get to a yes, it's usually 3 to 4 months, and then starts the security process. And we really had security process up to 7 months. So you talk to data protection, you talk to security, you talk to architecture, then you find out, okay, do we do a multi-tenant, do we do a whatever, like technical stuff. You reframe the pricing because they want a higher security level, which you didn't think, and so on. So it's very, I mean, it's long. It's especially the second part. We need to find ways how to shorten this. It's probably also because at first we didn't have 10 banks who already work with us. It's getting more now because we have the most data critical banks in our portfolio, which is really, really good. 2 days ago, when I was at that other bank, I mentioned that this other bank is a client, and then the CIO said, okay, I mean, if they are your clients, it's not going to be an issue with us, don't worry.
Nice.
So that's nice, but it's not like this at the beginning. At the beginning, it was a lot of work for our data security team, and it was crazy. Yeah, but I think we get it shorter and shorter. But it is still like nine months. Around 9 months.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I mean, as long as the deal size is also of that caliber, then it's worth going through.
Yeah, I mean, we have a quite wide range between 100K to 500K now, initial deal, like the first year, and I think we can bring them up to, I don't know, 1.5 to 3 million.
Very cool.
But that's where we are.
For the listeners out there, if you've got any questions to Patrick, just kick them in here. We're going to uncover them. I have a fun question for you, Patrick, and you'll have to tell us why. So, what would you choose? 5 inbound leads or 5 outbound leads to work on?
Personally or my team?
Let's
Because
take it personally. You get
so personally,
5 inbound.
I personally I have to take outbound because in my whole career as an individual rep, I'm counting it 7 inbound leads. 10 years, 7 inbound leads. So I don't really know how to do that.
Okay. Okay.
personally. That's why personally I would take the outbound. But if I'd have to, if I give them to the team, I'd say inbound because they are further in the process. And I mean, I have to take averages, right? Inbound leads, usually on average, it's easier. The win rate is higher.
Yeah.
Because of the maturity of the leads. So for a team, I would say inbound, but because of my incapability to handle inbound leads, I would say outbound.
Very interesting. Yeah, for the time, like to close them, it's kind of nicer. But what people usually would answer as well is like when you choose outbound leads, you know what you're choosing because you have qualified them, you have brought them in. It's like you would know, is this a deal worth working on? And the size of it, more or less. But what comes inbound, it's qualified, but how big is it? It's like, it's a black box. It's like,
That's true. That's true. Yeah, that's certainly the case. And I mean, I like outbound also because of the time the one who initiates the deal.
yeah.
That's also quite nice. But that's not the only way actually I know. But I think I could be wrong, but I think if we would Google and see whether on average inbound leads are like what's the win rate on average for inbound leads and the win rate for outbound leads, I'd almost certainly say inbound leads. And as a CSO, you have to be a mathematician, which means you gotta, take the best, and that's why I would
Exactly.
probably.
I love the comment. Inbound is like Tinder and outbound is like approaching in the bar. It's like you go targeted, you need to get.
That's true. That's a good
It's
one.
cool. All right.
Never
Patrick,
thought about this, but
no,
very
it is
good one.
good.
Yeah.
You can use it on LinkedIn the next time. Just remember to give the credit. Patrick, I I think the part about running a workshop for your clients is very, very interesting. And that is kind of, you spoke about the process that people usually are just lost. I did the discovery, did the demos, like what's next? Do you want to buy now or should we start security? And nobody's like, oh, we're not dating yet. Come on. So can you walk us through a little bit about the process of workshop? How was it born and what you're doing with it?
How was he born? Um, so yeah, there was actually these sales trainers 7 years ago who said we need to implement a value workshop, and that's where I tried it the first time. The reason was we lost most of the deals after 2 meetings, or 1 meeting. If we did demo in the first meeting, which happened quite a lot 8 years ago. So after 1 or 2 meetings, we usually radio silence, right? So we needed the step, and it was quite tough for the company back then. The biggest issue is that we didn't have a very, very well-defined ICP. So there were hundreds of problems that we solved for hundreds of people in hundreds of industries. So I sold to the CIO of an automotive company. I sold to the CEO of a pharma company. I sold to the CTO of a public of a tech company. I sold to whatever. I had so many different personas, and it was really, really hard to learn that. It was just it was impossible. I mean, that's also the reason I think the scaling at some point came to a halt because the ICP is not well defined and the product didn't develop for an ICP. And that was also a reason why we implemented these workshops back then. And it worked really well. It worked. We actually charged for the workshops,
Cool.
like between 2 or
Mhm.
5,000 a day. We said, hey, after the first half of the day, if you're not happy, we go home and you get the money back. And we try to cover the whole thing, like the value, but then also data protection, security, and so on, everything on one day. Potentially go back to this at some point, but I put it in a smaller version of this. I put in just the value part.
Mhm.
So the first part of the agenda, I mean, after the introduction, the second agenda point is demo, and demo the parts from the discovery
Mhm.
that are important, right? You show the best feature first, and then in the workshop, that's quite cool for most salespeople, I'm sure. You can it's a time where you can actually demo many features, also those that you're not exactly sure whether they are valuable, but you can demo a bit more, because afterwards you let people write on pieces of paper what use cases they think
Mhm.
are most valuable for their company. So they do that for 15 minutes, and then everybody is going to the front and explains, okay, I choose this use case because of that. Then you ask questions, and after 1 hour, you have a wall full of use cases. You have to group them. After you group them in a 10-minute break, you give 3 little dots to everybody who participates, and they take those little dots and put it on the use case they think is the best from the ones
Yeah.
who are which are on the white on the wall. And so you will get out with like a priority, first, second. So you choose maybe the first and the second, and then you start to disco in these two. You ask, what is the impact if we help you with this? What are the KPIs you
Yeah.
measure the improvement of this? What happens if we don't do anything? And so on. So you ask, you go deep, and you find the business case for this. Like, how many calls do you have? How long does it take you to summarize after every call? How many people, and so on. So in the end, you have a
Yeah.
business case, and you walk out with the business case. After the business case, usually the meeting, like a quick feedback round, and then that's it. That's 3
It
hours.
sounds amazing for the seller's perspective. Like, oh, how cool would be to have this deep of a discovery with a client in one place. But how do you manage to agree with a client that this is something valuable for you and even get them to pay for it, even though they can get the money back and stuff, but they're committing their time, their money, they're helping you to sell to them. So what happens in the process that they are so committed to go here?
So, I mean, we don't charge at the moment. We don't charge money. The reason is quite simple. We didn't lose a single opportunity that we did a workshop
Hmm.
with yet. If you had a lot of kind of benefiting from the workshop and then disappearing, that would mean you should charge because the commitment is not big enough. But as you said, it's quite a big commitment. How do you get that commitment early on in the process? And the answer is actually quite simple. I mean, if you do a good discovery and a good demo, and you can show within 5 minutes of your demo that, wow,
Hmm.
this can really solve something that problem we have. I know we are a bit lucky at Unique, to be honest, because the problem we solve is
Unique.
big. It's easily
Yeah.
quantifiable. Uh, Everybody has it. Nobody has it solved. The solution is also, it is critical. Not
Yeah.
we won't win everybody. We talked about it in regards to data and security. It's a big way to go still, but the pain is
Yeah.
there. So reach out to the right person, like get their agreement on the pains that you solve with the strategy that I said at the beginning of this discussion, and then show a good solution to the problem and suggest it. You have to suggest it with front up contract. If you suggest it, it's
Yeah.
halfway done, because at the end of the demo, it's quite simple. You can say something like, I know what most of the clients want to do at this point in time is they want to discuss internally and see what use case fit best, right? We talked about, let's say, 10 use cases now. I showed you the most important ones, but a few more. And I'm sure in your head, you're like, what is best now for my company? I have a suggestion. So what we did with most of the banks before you, we did a workshop, sat together for 3 hours with people from the business who are having that problem we talked about every single day, because they know whether it's really a problem. And we want to understand whether it's really a problem. At this stage, we talked about it, but 100% sure we are not. So let's bring people together. Let's take 3 hours and let's see. You will walk out of this meeting with people knowing what can be done with generative AI, people having 2 use cases that is really a priority, and we know whether the business case is worth actually moving forward. Do you think that makes sense? And then it makes sense
Patrick,
for
do
most.
you think it would work if you were selling a more general call recording solution, not for banks, like where there's a lot more competition? Do you think the prospects would be open to do it, or is it different?
It's probably different because I think lots of competition, but also the market is more. It's more like the SME market. So you have to figure out whether it makes sense, for 20K deal to do a workshop. But it could be the differentiating factor because if you suggest it, and honestly, when I bought stuff, sometimes I probably would have said yes if somebody would have suggested it to have a workshop with my sales team. Maybe not 3 hours, could be 2 hours. You could make it shorter for sure. And in the end, you walk out with the use cases you can solve best, which is quite good. It will give you the edge versus the competition,
Right.
hopefully. And so, yeah, maybe it could work as well. But sometimes speed is relevant. Still has to be fast. I mean, in our case, speed is relevant for us, but for our clients, unfortunately, still not, right? It's in enterprise, there's only speed end of the year and a new regulatory law requirement, a law that they have to fulfill within the next 2 months. That's when they speed. But other than that, not even for a 10 billion business case,
Very interesting. Okay. Are there any other questions online that you would like us to answer? Patrick, another question before anybody asks another question. People like to throw stuff at sales that something is dead. Like cold calling is dead, cold emailing is dead. I don't know, in-person events are dead, or something else is. Is there anything that you dropped and you think, oh, it's absolutely dead in the sales process?
Good one. I do think it's mostly used because it's catchy, isn't it? And everybody's going to read that it's that kind of thingy. So not sure.
No.
Not even Bant is dead, right? Bant is still viable in some areas. So even that, I don't know. And even the first things that would come to mind is kind of maybe mass emailing, but no, it still works in some areas. I mean, Europe way more so than the US. That's what I learned when I sold in the US versus Europe. I mean, it's crazy there. It's crazy. You have to do 20 more dials than here. You have to send out, and that makes it even worse for everybody else as well. If it's no data protection, so in Europe, you can still send out email. It still works, I think. Pretty sure if you have a good challenge to solve. When I worked at the company before, we had a persona that nobody else was selling to. So I did in 2019. Okay, that's now 4 years ago. Okay, you could argue maybe it's not the same again here now, but I sent out a generic email to 122 people, and I booked a meeting with 20.2% or something, like with
From an
23.
email? Nice.
41 people or something like this. So it's still possible. Was lucky persona. I don't think it works with sales leaders from tech companies because they are quite. But you find somebody. I don't know if something is dead. I don't think.
No.
I think you can make everything work for yourself. You can send a letter. You can send a gift. You can send outbound, and physical is not dead, for sure not.
Yeah.
No.
I agree.
I think.
Agree. It depends on how you spin it in and which environment you use it for, which persona, which companies, and so on. So nothing is dead so far, but if you would like to be popular in LinkedIn, use the word and you'll see how it flies.
Next thing that came to mind is selling without discovery, but even that works sometimes. It doesn't really
Depends on
matter.
what you're selling. It's like
Yeah,
really
it does.
very cool.
It does.
Okay, it doesn't seem like we've got any more questions. So, Patrick, I would like to thank you very much. Oh, there is a question. Look, Olena has asked a question, so we can just answer that one and then we can start wrapping it up. So, do you have any suggestions on how to communicate with leads on LinkedIn to make them interested in what you sell? Should it be general or long conversations? Oh, you're the perfect person to ask.
What I like, I mean, I get LinkedIn is probably, I don't get much, but I get cold calls from the UK, a few, maybe 5 per month. Emails, yeah, maybe 3, 4 a day. But LinkedIn is the most. I mean, for my persona, I can tell you, LinkedIn is the most overcrowded. So it's the hardest, I guess, also to stand out, I'd say. But if you do it a little bit different, you stand out. So what I mean, use the app for sure. And in the app, you can send voice messages. I always listen to the voice messages. That's for sure. You can even send a quick video message on the app. I'd always listen to the video message. And when you do that, keep saying, start with the problem that you solve. That's where, if I don't hear a problem, because it allows me also, it does allow me to say quickly no as well if I don't have the problem, but that's good for you too. You need to understand that when you have, if you sell me a leads generation services, I don't need it. We don't have a problem to generate this. It's not our problem. Somebody approached me with a video actually, and he said, look, sometimes data protection and security processes take a long time, and it was exactly my problem. So I booked a meeting with the guy, and we are still talking actually tomorrow again. So that works. So talk about the problem and not about the product. It's really hard to do. I see it so hard. People don't understand the difference between talking about the solution and the problem. Talk about the problem. So when I reach out, I always say what I just said before in the cold. I talk exactly like I would talk in the first 30 seconds of a cold call. Look, I'm talking to a lot of sales leaders in big banks in Switzerland, and they tell me they have one big challenge. And the challenge is that their advisors, after every single interaction, they need to document the calls. It takes them around 20 to 30 minutes. And are you familiar with this as well? And there you can, then that's the first 20 seconds. And then in a LinkedIn voice message, say quickly how you solve it. And then you get it, and you'll get it with leads that are worth something. That's why you need to do this.
I love that. And it's a little bit similar to even to LinkedIn posting. Like, as long as you don't talk about yourself or your company, but about the problems that you're trying to solve, it's so much easier to attract people to listen to you, because nobody cares about like you or your company. Okay, unique. Okay, Dream Data, we solve enterprise solutions. I don't care. It's like, tell me what my problem is, and then I will care much more. That's for sure. And I don't even think that it matters. Is it like a templated message or a long conversation? If you have a very targeted list of companies you're reaching out to on LinkedIn with a general template of what problems you're seeing, just like Patrick is saying, like, oh, we see that summarizing a meeting is a big problem for those types of banks. Do you see that? It's a template. It's not personalized, but it's so very targeted. It works.
Exactly. Yeah, personalization is. I think Yuri is doing that well on LinkedIn. Keeps saying that that relevancy is more important than personalization, and it's really the case. I mean, if you start with, "Hey Patrick, I've seen that you have been CSO at Unique for the last 2 years." It's not really. I mean, okay, you can do it, but I would care less, except compared to saying something like really relevant. I do think though that something very personalized, it makes me read further. If it's really like, hey, look, you posted something 2 days ago about blah blah blah, it really helped me in this deal, thank you. Something like this, of course, works really well.
Yeah.
But not everybody's posting, so you don't find that much data on people to keep personalizing that
and
well.
don't make it weird, like going into, 2 weeks ago on Instagram, I saw that you went to that specific coffee shop, and well, so it seems like you like coffee. Do you want to learn about attribution? Like,
Exactly. Then nothing connected to, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Patrick, thank you so much for the hour of your time. Everybody who has been listening, thank you so much. Whenever you have questions to Patrick, where can people find you?
On LinkedIn, obviously, best place. You only find, so if you put in Patrick Truempi with a U umlaut, I have no idea. There's no other person who's called like this on LinkedIn. So you have to find me if you
But you have to find the umlaut then in
you have
your
to find the umlaut. That's right. I'm not sure if, I mean, the LinkedIn search is obviously programmed that you have to know exactly the name. I'm not sure if it works actually for you if you don't use the umlaut. It does?
It does.
It does. Yeah, it does. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm Swiss. I obviously use the umlaut.
But you're pretty unique no matter what. So find Patrick on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, everybody. Catch up with you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
Bye-bye. We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.